Let's start. Welcome to the Talk Up podcast. It's myself, Janai. What's he doing? Jeez.
Well, you couldn't sound like you want to be here unless if you tried. Just go on, James.
Right, go on, James.
Here we go. Welcome back to the Talk Up podcast, and we are joined by a special guest from Doncaster Cables, which it goes by Aaron. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Aaron Wallstow, Doncaster Cables.
There you go.
And we got Jay and Will, the usuals.
We're back. So you have made the very short trip. How long did it take you?
About 4.5 hours.
4.5 hours to...
glorious UK motorways, driving 50 miles an hour through roadworks. Then
in an
30 miles an hour.
i4. He is a full electric man. So not only did he come 4.5 hours, you did it in an all electric. So it is possible. All right? It is possible. Electric is working.
If you plan properly, because Will kindly agreed that I could charge up here last night, so I had a full charge on the way back. Brought the car here last night, then I was going to walk back to the hotel. Got it all in position, realised I'd left the charging lead at home, and you've got untethered chargers, so then I had to go and find somewhere else. But it would have worked perfectly, but not quite.
So yeah, almost planned ahead. Almost planned ahead, yeah. So you come down here to join us today to obviously talk about cables, talk about manufacturing. Jay's got lots of questions for you from an electrician's perspective. I will happily chew the fat on any manufacturing and the battle of the crap in the industry. And Jay is here for shits and giggles. So for you guys who have already watched the Alert podcast that went out, Jimbo luckily missed that one because it was followed by quite a heavy night out on a school night. And Jay is the result of a good time. So, yeah, we may or may not get much input from him today. but there you go. So, Jay, you had a great question to kick us off with, I think, for Aaron about cables and how you can tell the difference between a good cable and a bad cable.
Well, are we talking about the thermosetting?
No, what we're talking about off camera.
Yeah. So when I have a cable, the difference I can tell is just stripping. If I got a poor cable, it's solid to strip. Like, it's difficult, and then I'm like, I don't want that cable again. Like, is that the difference between quality of cables, or is that just like the way cables are? Is it just?
Yeah, it's a good point. So that's probably one of the only bits as an electrician that you'll get a judge on, whether a cable's good or bad. So the strippability. And it's the most common problem in the cable industry, the nature of what we're doing. We're extruding a hot plastic onto another plastic, and they just want to stick together. So when we're actually sheathing the cables, we're applying chalk, and we have loads of control measures in place to try and prevent that sticking cause, putting more chalk in than other people. We're then strip testing it as we're winding it. Occasionally some do get out, and then you've got the support that we can then help you through that. We'll come to site, etc. But that's the only bit as an electrician that you can actually feel and see in the quality. So when you look at the cable themselves, if you got into the technical piece, there's about 100 other tests that you can't do as an electrician, and you can't actually see or feel the difference. So the amount of copper that's in there, how resistive the actual cable is, how long it's going to last in its lifetime, what its tensile strength's like, how it's going to age over a period of time. No way for an electrician to see that whatsoever, and that's where you've got to trust where you're getting the product from and how it's actually manufactured. So there's this big spectrum of that's what you can see and what you can feel. What's all this stuff over here that's going on that you're never going to be able to see by putting it in?
Yeah, because I think that's a big thing for an electrician. Like, I'll be honest, I just go into my wholesale and I ask I need 100 meters of this or that. And like, as it's been recently, I don't really care what brand it is, as long as our cable strips okay, there's nothing else wrong with it. That's all I want. So I've had cables in the past where like it just feels so bad, it's so solid to strip, and I have said to wholesalers, don't give us that cable again. So I think that's where good cable manufacturers over time will become, better. It's just when the installers are using better cable, Like, and like I said, we won't use that rubbish cable again. So is that a thing you find in over time that you've...
Yeah, it's something we really want to change. When you look at most of the other products in the industry, people will choose a brand. They'll choose a brand of socket and a brand of protection device, and they'll ask for that. And then when you ask for a cable, you just ask for the cable.
Yeah, call it 2.5.
Yeah, call it 2.5, please. And we've got to figure out a way to change that, because not every cable's the same by a million miles. There's such a spread of quality, and the bar is now so low in the industry. And it's changed over the last few decades, but most of the products now imported. Over 80% of the cable coming in is imported. You went back 20, 30 years, over 85% were made in the UK. So the cable industry's got a reputation for being self-sustainable, self-policing, etc., and that has changed. So it's changed over the last 20, 30 years, where that's no longer the case, and it's price-driven. And we need to try and get people understanding that cables are different. Why would you choose a brand of protectional device but not choose a brand of cable when that's the bit that links everything together in the middle? I
think there's a few things there as well. That we were talking off camera beforehand, some numbers that blew my mind, right? So saying 85% of the cable used to be made in the UK. That housed 45,000 jobs, okay, across 27 different UK-based manufacturers.
Yeah, some of those are multiple sites as well, multiple factories.
Right, and then you've got obviously the surrounding industries to support the cable industry. Now there is 6 UK manufacturers or plants that make cable in the UK and a workforce of 2,000. So there's 43,000 people who have either had to retrain, reskill, or out at work because of a mass importation of that product that used to be here. Now you think about what's happening down at Tata Steel at the moment for 10,000 jobs, and and they're trying everything they can to keep that going, and they have been for it feels like forever now. But I never heard about the death of the cable industry in the UK.
Yeah.
And you think that that's something that surely we could look to bring back.
Yeah, we're the last cable company left in the UK that makes the full range of general wiring products and flexible cords. So you're looking at armoured meter tails, twin and earths, conduit wires, and then all the flexors, Arctic, heat resistant.
And that's just because the price is driven out.
It's just all gone overseas.
Yeah. Driven everywhere else out.
And I think that's a problem. So when you look back at why you don't specify a brand, those years ago when you had all those cable makers, everyone sold to a wholesaler based on my cable's better than theirs, and mine will last longer, and I've got more copper, and I've got a better quality compound. And now the main marketing base for cables is mine's the lowest price.
Yeah. That is the differential now, isn't it? And we were talking about it with Alert yesterday. We were talking about it with lots of other contractors. The procurement behaviour is now, rather than value driven, it's completely price
sensitive.
Yeah, it's completely price driven, which then causes. Well, we were talking about it, and I've talked about it a lot. I keep talking about it. Sorry, guys. It causes the de-evolution and devaluing of the product, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a quality standard. I mean, we were talking beforehand about the amount. Obviously, I know how you can de-engineer wiring accessories and de-engineer circuit protection. I've been doing that for over a decade, and I've seen it firsthand. But cable, I never thought about it. I mean, tell us some of the things that you've seen and and the impacts of that degrading, I don't know how else to put it really, of cable to hit a price and the impact that has on the actual cable itself.
Yeah, so when you've been involved, so I've worked at Doncaster Cables now 17 years. Started off in quality control.
And can smell the different types of cable, as we were saying.
I knew I shouldn't have mentioned that. Smell different types of cable, yeah.
So there you go, guys. Next time you're at a rewind, just give it a sniff.
Yeah, I can smell a compliant one and a non-compliant. No, I can't. But yeah, been there, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved in every stage of the business, really. So a bit of sales, but mainly quality control, then technical. And then I worked in the factory and run the factory for a bit, and then director and oversee a lot of the site. But with that, you get to see all the decisions that we make. So there's loads of processes in cable, and it's true proper manufacturing, as I call it. We've got a handful of raw materials. We buy copper rod, and then we buy in stabilizers, fillers and resins to make the compounds. And with that, we can make about 3,000 different SKUs. And then there's £20 million worth of plant and machinery, and multiple processes in between that to get it from a bar of copper and all these powders and oils into a cable. And at every single stage, you've got a manufacturing decision as to, do I want to go down a quality route or do I want to make it more cost effective? And we always refer to it as like a T-junction. You can go down the cheapest price or you can go down trying to add value and add quality. And we're always going down the adding value bit. And, well, a few examples. If you look at wire drawing, you draw the wires, it goes through a series of dies and it stretches it out or draws it out. The next stage is annealing the copper, which involves heating it up and cooling it down, and that's what gets you the flexibility and strength in the copper. If you want to have the cheapest product, you'll anneal it as little as you possibly can because it's highly energy intensive. Whereas if you want to have a better quality product, you will go and anneal it more, so it's more flexible and easier to fit into a termination or a socket.
Right.
Or if you look at cable designs, you familiar with MYY cable?
MYY.
It's like a...
I think I know. Is it like kind of like a flexi kind of?
It's sort of, yeah. It's like a circular fixed wiring, but an MYY cable has got a single solid strand of copper. It's a European spec cable, but it's designed to be as cheap as it possibly can.
Right.
So the copper in the middle of there. In fact, I'll put a plug in there. We're doing a video on it on our social media channels. But the copper in there is just one single solid strand. So even if it's 6 mil, you've got one solid piece of copper, which makes it incredibly hard to work with, but easier to manufacture.
Yeah, because it's one process of shooting it through.
Straight through, yeah. Whereas ours, most of our design products, like Tough Sheath, which is the alternative, has got 7 fine wires twisted together to make it easier and more flexible to work with.
With that solid wire, I've used a cable. It's like an armoured that's not an armoured. It's got like a outer sheath and like an inner flexi sheath.
Yeah, that falls to bits in your hands.
Yeah.
That's MYY.
Ah, yeah. So I've used that. I don't find it too bad to work with. But I've only worked with it up to 2.5.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too bad. But I can imagine if you're going up to like 6 or 10 mil, it gets quite difficult to...
I think they go up to 16 mil. Well, yeah, up to 2.5 it'll be all right.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a bit like twin and earth core then, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, they do that up to 16 mil, but 6 mil's quite common for EV chargers and things like that.
Well, and that gets difficult then to...
Yeah, because it's just like a solid rigid
yeah, I got you.
rod, yeah.
Quick question. At the beginning...
He's alive.
Yeah. You did mention earlier about obviously spreading your message that your cable adds value to the end user. Right. My thing is this. What marketing do you guys do? The reason why I say it, and I'm not personally coming at you, is I've been to quite a few wholesalers and I've never seen any branding for any cable manufacturer or anything like that, any posters or any stuff on the counter. So how are you guys getting that message across?
Well, we're pinning all of our hopes on this podcast.
Oh, is it?
No, no, it's another good question. So we're quite active on social media. Okay. So we've done that over the last probably 3 years.
And have you seen that have a positive impact?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. We enjoy speaking with the contractors and the installers.
And that's why I think where social media for manufacturers has changed a lot of things. I don't think a lot of brands take advantage of it properly. We've essentially built 2 brands off the back of social media for exactly that. Direct communication with the contractor, straight in their inbox, essentially, in a much more personal way than sending an email or anything else. Before, you're always reliant on the wholesaler trying to deliver your message the way you want it delivered to the contractor, either on the counter or whatever it might be. You just can't. It could, and I think social media, because I've seen your stuff on social. It is good, and a lot of people, when they have a cable question or they will look to Doncaster because they'll have some content on it, and I think that's massive. Whereas your likes of your JLOs of the world and this, that, and the other probably don't. And if they do, I have not come across it.
Yeah.
So is that going to be quite a core part of how you think you grow the brand?
Yeah, well, we're working on that and we're doing that and we are getting success. We're trying to work with colleges so we can train electrical apprentices and we have them come to site. We show them round, we do courses with them. But it's very much like chicken and the egg. So you speak to a wholesaler and when you talk about this added value that a cable can bring, and why shouldn't it be any different to all the other products where you're selling on these features? You go to different light fittings and you've got 3-year warranty, 5-year warranty, and you've got these features and benefits and differentiators. We're massively different. We're making in the UK, we've got all these checks and balances, we've got the annealing of the copper, we make specific grades of compound to add value into the end user. Our twin and earth is a real soft, supple sheathing, so it's easier to strip. We've got innovative products, but because the bar is so low and everyone's importing product and electricians are used to it, the wholesalers, probably rightly so, then, well, I've never been asked for that. And they don't want that. They want this one that's... But then when you speak to an electrician, if you can get the message across, what electrician isn't going to want a cable that is safer, better to work with, higher quality, better technical support? And it's just trying to find out where you can get the electricians to ask the wholesaler that they want it, or the wholesaler to start explaining to the electricians that it's available. And if we can get that connect, which is difficult because the market is so low and it's de-engineered and low price, and if we can change that somehow before a disaster happens, because that's the thing that people normally wait for. Something bad happens and then it triggers, we need to look at this.
That's what Steve was saying at WeHire, wasn't he? About talk sense. In the UK, we never adjust until someone dies. Something has to happen. Something has to be has to hit the news for someone to be forced to look at changing something, or what is the reason for that? Do you think a lot of because there's a crazy stat, something like 12,000 UK electrical house fires in 2000, I think it's 2021 or whatever it was. How much of that do you think is down to imported cable?
Yeah, that's the problem with when you get those house fires. It's very difficult to tell where it started. But if you look at the electrical industry, the whole thing's connected. So when you look at, again, going back in time a bit, when people sold on quality of product, you had the British standard, which was the absolute minimum.
Still is.
Yeah, it still is. Yeah, and then everyone added something on top. And now everyone wants the cheapest price, and they're right at the bottom of those minimums, and sometimes below, and we've got examples of that where people have gone below and there's been recalls and things like that. But if the whole industry does that, and you've not just then got cable doing it, but you've also got the protection devices doing it and everything else in there, everyone's working on these lower levels, and you've just got this higher risk of everything then coming together. Whereas you might have had a cable that was low quality before, but the protection device was all right, and it had counteracts. But now everything's down at this low level.
We can attest to that, because even with our relationship with the factory and being one company and being able to do things at an aggressive price point, because of the quality standards that we have within our product, we can't get anywhere near some of these importers. And you end up asking yourself the question, like, if I can't make it for what they're selling it for, I know what's in mine. What's not in theirs? And that's the question you then start asking. I've seen some crazy prices on RCBOs, and RCBO is quite a technical bit of kit, and it has to go through some vigorous testing to be made to a standard, of I would say average quality, let alone a good standard, the certification that we have, for example. And there is a lot of dangerous, and I do think it is dangerous product in the market, just from a circuit protection. I'll be honest, I never even thought about the cable. But you're right, cable's probably been going through that far longer than anything. And when did importing really start taking a grip of the industry, this importing of cheap cable from places like Turkey and Lithuania and stuff?
I'd say probably 90s, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I'd say. Was when it really started to get a grip, and then it's grown and grown as it becomes more common. It's then grown. But you just have to look at reels now. You went back in time, older installers will see it. You used to have brands on reels. You'd have Dracker, you'd have Pirelli, you'd have Doncaster Cables. And now everything's just this plain grey reel. And the reality is that those plain grey reels are really done on purpose. So when you go into, the importers are importing product, and in my view, they send out a tender to 5 companies overseas. They're not asking them for the best possible quality cable. If they were, they'd knock on Doncaster Cables door, obviously. But they're just asking for the cheapest price. And when it's a plain reel, you then don't know what you're getting as an electrician.
Between one importer and another.
Guarantee if you went to a wholesaler over the course of 2 or 3 months and you're getting those plain reels, you'll have a variety of manufacturers that you've dealt with. And they'll be from different countries, not in the UK. So if you need that technical backup, where do you actually go? Or you've got a question, where do you go?
Well, it also comes back to manufacturing processes, and again, without nerding out too tough on manufacturing, like we know from circuit protection perspective, when you are just an OEM kind of importing situation, you go to your factory, quote unquote, or most of them like assembly plants, and say, right, I'm going to give you an order of 10,000 RCBOs. They need to be this price. They then put a tender out to all the different raw material factories for the biometallic strips, the enclosures, and who can make these the cheapest for me. And there's no quality control procedure. They have no idea where those components are coming from. So batch to batch or order to order, it might look the same. You'll have a completely different product within that RCBO enclosure, which is why you end up having product recalls, why all of a sudden you have a batch that runs 6 to 10 degrees higher than the last batch, all this other stuff. All of a sudden you've never had a problem with a product, and now all of a sudden you've got a problem with everyone that they do. And it's because there's no continuity in the product. Cable's definitely the same. So, I know people that import cable, and they put it out to different factories in Turkey and places like that, and they're cheapest this time, or the copper price from them's good, and that's what they get in, having never made factory visits or anything else.
Yeah, interesting to talk to your view of the different protective devices and where people haven't been to see the factory.
Yeah.
And then there's that other level of some importers don't go to the factories where they're buying the products from, which is just a big no-no anyway. But if they did go to the factories have they actually got the technical ability?
Do they know what they're looking at?
Yeah, do they know what they're looking at? Are they just going to walk around, yeah, that's pretty. Oh, that looks good. There's lots of stuff spinning around there.
It looks like I expect it to look. Tick, tick.
Whereas when you've actually got that technical knowledge, you'd go to the factory and say, well, I'm not happy about that. Why are you doing it like that? And why isn't that batched together with this? And why is that machine running like that? Because that's not what you're used to, but you have to have that knowledge.
So we always talk about our TV certification, our independent certification standards, and our own testing labs and everything else. What standards are there for cable?
So there's a big mixture of British standards and then British European standards.
What about like certifications?
Certification, so there's the biggest would be BASEC, so that's the British Approval Service for Cables.
And how easy is it to get that certification?
It's difficult. They come and do audits on site, and they audit you when you do your first test, but then they're coming throughout the year and taking samples. So they're taking samples of your product throughout the year. So they come to our factory 5 times a year, they'll take random samples, and then they take it back to the lab and they test it to make sure it's continually
And do they do that for the
standards.
importers and that as well?
They do that for the importers. So I've come to see, again, it's a bit like the British standard, but BASEC should be the minimum. If you've got BASEC approval, for me it shows that you have the ability to make something to the right specification. Not necessarily that you are doing it all the time, but you have the ability to do it. Because there's issues where about 2012 there was a massive recall of cable and they had BASEC approval.
Right.
So when they're overseas, there's the opportunity there where they call it golden sampling. When we're making for stock in the UK, we have a warehouse at Doncaster, £4 million worth of finished goods, and we're shipping that out to wholesalers. So when they come to our site, we're actually holding all the stock that we're then shipping around the UK. So the random samples are actually stuff from stock.
From stock. Yeah.
When you're importing a product or exporting one, you're making it to order for containers. Mm-hmm. So you're making a container full and then you're shipping that container. So you then lose that chance of actually testing the stock, because the stock that you've got could be something you've made before and to a certain spec. But then the stock that you ship out to someone in a container can be something completely different.
Especially if it's been driven on price.
Exactly, yeah.
So Doncaster Cables are banging the drum in terms of quality.
Nice, banging the drum. See, we did that drummer cable.
Yeah,
You didn't
that
even
was
realise
good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, anyway.
So I gave you one there.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so like I was saying, so you guys are, shouting out about quality. Are there other established suppliers or manufacturers, in your industry that are doing the same thing? Or
Yes.
is it just yourselves?
No, there's other ones. So for me, when we talk about competitors, I would see Prysmian as our competitor. So there's Prysmian of a global organisation, biggest cable maker on the globe by a long, long way. And they've got factories all around the world, but they've got factories in the UK. And they're a similar mentality to us. It's quality of product, quality of service, etc., and designing products as they should be made.
Right, okay.
And for me, they are a true competitor, and we've got a similar mindset, and we're making stuff in the right way to the right standards that's going to last the test of time.
Fair.
After that, we get caught, said that other people are competitors. So and so's a competitor. They're not. They're not making cable. They're importing cable. They're not trying to make something to a high spec and the same quality as we are. So Prysmian will be our competitor. Everybody else is sort of a lower level alternative, if you like. Probably similar to what we were discussing with different brands of fuse boards and stuff earlier.
100%, yeah. And so, I mean, you had another good question about cable.
Yeah, so when we do our certificates in EICRs, this is something I never really thought about until fairly recent, to be honest. The difference between thermosetting and thermoplastic, because it gives us an option that we have to take on the type of wiring. And what is the difference, and is there a way you can tell that when you're on site? Because if we're doing an EICR, we need to put that cable type in. And what is the difference? Can we tell what type of cable it is?
Yeah, so the difference, if you've had enough practice knowing what the difference is, you can actually feel it.
And smell it.
And smell it, yeah. We're going to smell it when it's being made. So you can see it, but probably the best advice is to look at the British standard number on the outside of the cable and cross-reference it back, because it can be difficult to see the difference. To explain what the difference is, so thermoplastic, generally PVC, 70-degree operating temperature. Thermoplastic means that the materials in there are melted down and then they set, and they have the same properties as when they started. And you could melt those materials back down again, reset them in a different shape, and they'd have the same properties. Thermosetting is then 90-degree operating temperature, and it's usually formed by a graft and a catalyst. So there's two components. They're mixed together when you're extruding it, and then when they actually set, they set as a different material with different properties. So they bind together, longer molecular change, higher operating temperature, better stability, generally a better protection against water and moisture ingress and things like that.
So is there times where you would say to use one rather than the other, really? Or is there one that's just used mostly?
No, there's still a bit of a mixture, really. So domestic installs tend to be PVC, thermoplastic. And then when you get into other installs, more commercial high-rise building, it changes to thermosetting. But that's, again, generally because most of the thermosetting products have got low smoke, non-halogen sheathing compounds. But not all thermosetting products are low smoke, non-halogen. So if you looked at an Armoured, they're all thermosetting insulation, but then PVC bedding, PVC sheathing's available. So it's quite a difficult one to see unless you've seen it a lot.
Yeah. It's always a different, like when we, like I said, filling out our forms, especially on EICR, it's always a mixture, whether it's thermosetting or thermoplastic. Like, I don't know, it's always weighing it up. But I think we usually just go thermosetting, to be honest. But it could be both, I guess.
What's the cost difference between the two?
In terms of compound, so if I looked at just an insulation grade, so a thermoplastic PVC insulation grade, around about £1,000 a tonne for the compound. And then if we looked at a cross-linked polythene thermosetting like you'd get in a 6242B LSF Twin and Earth, you're probably looking around £2,500 a tonne.
So it's quite a bit then.
Quite a big difference, yeah.
Because, I mean, you must have seen them, with everything that happened over the last sort of 10, 15 years with the regs and stuff, a pick up in LSF. Because at LSF now, I mean, most things require LSF, don't they?
Yeah.
Whereas before, it wasn't the case.
Yeah, I'd still say it's probably more PVC. It's probably about 70% PVC to LSF, yeah.
Because what areas do you have to fit LSF now?
I know commercial you do.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to be LSF. I don't think you have to do domestic.
No, domestic. I wasn't thinking domestic, because you tend to be able to get out of the building quick enough.
Yeah, a lot of it comes back to...
Well, you hope anyway.
It's access routes. So if you've got a high-rise building and people aren't familiar with the route of escape, you need it to not have that black smoke coming out of there.
Is that black smoke that can kill people, though, isn't it? Quicker than flames and anything else. It's the inhalation of that black smoke, isn't it?
Yeah, so that black smoke, it's hydrogen chloride content. Right, stop me if I get too tech geeky, but this is a good subject. So you've got low smoke non-halogen, and then you've got PVC. And then you've got LSF. You heard of the term LSF before? So LSF used to be low smoke non-halogen. Again, if you went back to the good old cable days.
Yeah, because I didn't know. I thought LSF didn't have halogen in it.
Yeah, but it's different now. So some of the imported product take LSF to mean lower smoke and fume than a PVC.
Lower smoke.
Lower smoke and fume.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you look at the percentages, again, I'll plug another video. We've got a video on this one as well. We did it the other week. So PVC.
What's your YouTube channel? What's your handle?
I think it's Doncaster Cables official. I think.
Well, there you
something
go.
like
Guys,
that,
we'll put it in the show notes anyway. Go give them a follow and subscribe.
Yeah, but we burn some in there. So PVC, when you burn it, 28% hydrogen chloride content typically coming out, and that's the nasty poisonous bit.
Yeah.
Low smoke non-halogen, less than 0.5%.
That's a huge difference.
And then LSF,
Lower smoke.
taking it lower smoke, a few in the market, about 22%.
It's not much lower then.
So it's just a bit lower.
It's just a bit lower.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that. I thought it was one or the other.
And it used to be LSF. I think used to be a trade name of a different company that
I
then went
remember being
bust.
at Ed's and started seeing it more and more on quotes and stuff, and then realised, shit, that's a lot more expensive.
And harder to work with as well. It's the amount of filler in there is
It's hard to strip.
harder to strip.
Yeah.
I suppose it's just because of the thickness of it.
That's usually the white cable, and there's
Yes.
a lot of I see it is white. Is that the difference between lower smoke and LSF, or like? Can you tell the difference between both of them, or no?
It's very difficult. Again, it goes back to who's made the cable. You just have to have trust in who's made the product.
So there isn't a standard then for
And you buy the plain reels, don't you?
Yeah.
You could do that, actually on your thermoplastic thermosetting question. Just ring the manufacturer who's ever on the outside of your reel and just ask them which one it is.
They don't even know what they.
No, yours would just be a plain grey one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but you get that, don't you? It's like we have it here. It bugs the crap out of me. Like you call us, with a technical question, we can answer it. Okay, and everyone here can answer it. And we've got the data sheets for everything. We've got the certs for everything, this, that, and the other. And we make it to a standard. Just then, you have 3 standards of a cable, but you actually still only really got 2. But because there's a lower smoke standard, who sets that standard? Like, is it just we fit LSF in this communal area, but it's not actually LSF then, is it?
It was.
How do people get away with that?
For me, it's just an
how do people get away with selling
immoral
it?
niche where LSF used to be zero halogen. So everyone had a trade name. I think LSF was BICC's trade name for low smoke non-halogen. So ours is LSNH, and then you get OHLS, OLZH, all these different trade names. But that trade name of LSF expired, and people then just took it to be lower smoke and fume. And this immoral niche was, I need to have my cable cheaper than someone else's, so I'll use this LSF term and call it lower smoke and fume, and it's introduced itself into the market as an option that people aren't even aware
of. So it's not in
of.
the regs then? There's not like a regulatory standard for lower smoke?
No, in the regs you've got PVC, and then there's certain British European standards to test what should be low smoke non-halogen, and they're less than 0.5% hydrogen chloride emissions. So anything above than that is not low smoke non-halogen, but it doesn't stop someone calling it lower smoke and fume.
Because it's lower than a standard PVC cable.
Yeah.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, this is what I mean. For, like, as an electrician, I find when I first started to speak to you guys with consumer units, in my head it's just a board. It's all the same. It's not all the same. Now speaking to yourself with cables, it's not just cables. There's so much involved in everything, and I think it's just getting a message out to everyone for understand there is a big difference between manufacturers and good quality and bad quality, and for myself now knowing a bit more about cables, next time I go into the wholesaler,
You know to ask the question.
Yeah.
Do
you know what I mean? It was the same with circuit protection as well. You just think board was just a board. It's not.
It's not, but then the only differentiator you tend to see or get in a wholesaler or from other electricians, or when you're trying to win a quote, is price, isn't it? Oh, why am I out on this? Well, I've quoted you this, that, and the other. Well, what's he using? Oh, that's right. Yeah, but he's won the job, and then you still got to feed your kids. We have become, like Nathan coined the term yesterday from Alert, like it's prime culture. Like, I want it cheapest I can find it, and I want it now. right?
Yeah.
And it's bleeding into the industry. And I've preached it a lot of times on the podcast. I do it to anyone who will listen. That really is, you keep driving money out of the industry. What you're actually driving is quality out of the industry. Right? If you keep driving the price out of everything to the bottom point, the products you are going to receive, like you mentioned earlier, are going to be the cheapest, nastiest version of what you wanted.
Yeah.
Right? What you got and what you wanted are two different things, but what you're going to pay for it, that doesn't mean you can't find value in the market.
Yeah, but do you think it's because the electricians are not thinking of it as, they're not going to assume that that's a lot worse than that one. They just think it's cheaper because we don't know about all this. Like yourself, you individually test. As for you do a lot more tests than others. But as an electrician, you don't know that.
No,
so you just think it's cheaper, and you're getting you're getting the same product.
I'd say that because if I was your wholesaler and I've got all this knowledge of cable manufacturing, and you come and you wanted the cheapest 2.5 twin and earth, I'd word that back to you and say, so what you're asking for then is the twin and earth that has the lowest amount of copper possible and the cheapest grade of PVC, so it's got the shortest lifespan, and the cheapest quality reel that I can possibly find, so it's got more chance of falling to bits. Is that the one that you want? And you probably say, no, I don't want that.
Yeah,
that's what you're asking for.
Yeah. So if someone said that,
I'm definitely going to use that.
Your next question, what's the price difference? And it was only a little bit more for the better quality. You'd definitely be going for the better quality. But it's just
But
knowing.
if there was a big price difference,
You're right. And I'm not just saying it because he's here, right?
Yeah.
Right. Mark at ABM.
yeah,
Now, I know they're a bit of a unicorn when it comes to electrical wholesaling, right? And they all know their stuff up there. They sell Navitas boards. They always have done, and they've sold it because he grilled me on every bit of technical aspect of the product and blah blah blah, and they never have a problem with it. They know how we operate, yada yada. He only sells Doncaster Cable. His customers know they pay more from it than they can if they're buying some imported brand from another independent or national around the corner.
yeah.
And they don't care because they never have a problem with it. The cable's quality. And Mark's openly says to me, "You go buy that. That's my price for this, and I know what it's worth essentially, and that's what I'm selling to you." And none of his customers complain, and they all buy their cable from Mark, and it's all Doncaster.
Yeah, and that's why we really value the partnerships, because where you've got one like Mark, and you've got someone who's willing to understand the differentiators, the price becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because they've understood it and they've trained their staff. And when someone, I can buy that reel £4 cheaper somewhere else, yeah, but that's because X, Y, Z, etc. And like the conversation we're having now, it's, oh yeah, I get that. I'm not going to have a problem. If I do, then there's some backup there to sort it out. But when you just supply to the masses, it's difficult.
Right? Or an extra £1 on a breaker. As an electrician, why would you take the risk? Because that's what you're buying, right? You're not saving money, you're buying risk.
Yeah.
That's essentially what you're doing. And that risk doesn't necessarily always have to lead to death and harm. Risk of a call-out because something's gone wrong. Risk of a failure, right? Risk of there not actually being 100 metres on the coil. I've seen that before as well.
Regular, yeah.
It says
very common.
It's plus or minus 3, isn't it, usually?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you might pay for, your coil might be for an extra £5 more expensive, for example, let's say. But there's 100 metres on it.
Yeah, we can, so it's a really valid point, we can control our reels to within about 10 centimetres for every reel on Twin and Earth.
Right.
And ours is tolerance. Every month we calibrate the clocks, -0, +1. So all of our reels will be between 100 and 101 metres, and they're normally 100.1 metres because that's where we can control it. Most of the people are the same, and if you've got 100 plus or minus 3, they'll be at 97.
There'll be 97.
There's 3% there.
Yeah.
But how often do you actually rewind a reel and see there's 3% missing?
Yeah. So you think you're buying it for cheaper, but you're actually getting 3 metres less of cable.
Yeah.
And that's really common.
I can make my wholesaler reel out next.
You say that when I was we used to get a guy called Jason to do our measurements when we do a meter. He's only like that. you wouldn't get someone like Lee doing it, right? Lee was about 6'1".
Yeah.
You're losing money every time he measures you out a meter. But yeah, we also stopped cutting cable as well. But it depends who's measuring it out as well. Yeah. Always buy a full reel if it's a short guy behind the counter. But yeah, it's little things that people don't realise that happens on this side of the fence to the wholesaler. The wholesalers are aware that it's ±3 because it says it. They'll say it, but they don't tell you that.
No, they keep that quiet.
All of ours would just say 100, and you can only do that if you're guaranteeing there's 100 on there. But it becomes the norm. That's the problem. We talked earlier about reels. It's become the norm that reels fall to bits. Like reels of cable.
Yeah.
And you've now got people who go, if it falls to bits, I'll go and get a reel saver. You just make a better quality reel to start with. And if you manhandle anything, it's going to fall to bits. But we buy all of ours locally from a local firm. They're about 30, 40 minutes away. But the cardboard is thicker than the rest of the marketplace, and the way they seal the ends is it's just like a folded seam, so they don't fall to bits. I'm not saying that you can't. Someone will send pictures now of Doncaster Cables. if you throw it about, it'll fall to bits, but it won't fall to bits as quick as somebody else.
Leave it out in the rain. It's knackered.
But that's just one of those conscious choices. We could save money by having a lesser quality reel that fell to bits easier, but that's not what you want in the product. No. Once it becomes the norm, you just put a reel saver next to the stack of twin and earth that you've got and sell a reel saver at the same time. It's crazy.
It is a bit like that. I mean, people obviously we take a lot of pride in that in our boxes. Okay, I take full responsibility for everyone upgrading their box from a marketing perspective in the UK for what we've done over the past 5-6 years. However, what these guys missed is the reason we went for that box and the way we designed that box is it's double padded either side. It reduces damage because these things, when they go on couriers or they're in the back of a van or whatever, so stop the board getting broken and damaged or dented or scratched. And these they just paint, they just put colour on their boxes, same shit boxes. We actually improved the packaging and it's all those little things. They cost money, but they add up. And then when you get the product, it's as you expect. It works as you expect and things like that. You can say cable reels. When I picture a bunch of cables in the back of a van, and I don't know what they look like in the back of your van, but I bet they're in bits.
Yeah,
they're all bent over, all falling apart. And it's trying to rip it off. That it's a nightmare, isn't it?
And I think that comes with it's how much you like the product. We take great pride in what we're doing, just like you guys explain with how you're actually putting the products together. And when you've actually got pride in what you're making and what you're selling, you want to look after it and you want it to be right. And if something isn't right, you want to put it right and help someone there. When you just switch to this massive commodity thing of cheapest price, you send a return back to someone. It's almost like, well, what do you expect? No problem, I'll swap it for you. Or you got people ordering lighting in it and there's an accepted failure rate, and then they just knock it off the next bill when they reorder, and it becomes a norm to fail.
There's a couple of manufacturers now in the UK, I won't mention them, allegedly, well, I think that's the get out of jail for it, that they will give a wholesaler a returns rebate. So rather than bothering us throughout the year with your returns, we're going to pay you an extra 3% rebate to cover all that.
Yeah.
That's how much confidence they have in their product. We know you're going to get X amount of failures, so rather than us processing debit notes and credit notes and having someone deal with this and send something, we're just going to give you an extra rebate of 3%.
That's mad. So they know their product's going to fail, so they're paying someone just to
deal with it for them. But that's what it's getting to, though, right? And it all comes down to, well, I only want to pay £1 for it. Well, then you're going to get less than £1's worth of product because they've still got to make money. That's scary.
So in essence, though, because the market's so price sensitive, can you blame the manufacturer then?
I think what Aaron said earlier, there's a moral fortitude required. And I do think it depends on the product, and I think it depends on the industry. If I buy a cheap desk and it falls apart in a year, I'm not going to kill anyone.
Yeah.
It would just annoy me. Yeah. Right? If I buy, like, RCBOs are life protection devices. Everybody's home, every commercial building is full of cable, right? Again, let's remove life, because everyone always immediately goes to risk of life. What about risk of asset? What about insurance companies, right? You're paying an insurance premium on your home, on your building, on all those. As an electrician, you have to pay for insurances, right? Well, if you're using better quality products, if the market could regulate itself along that, you would potentially save money on insurance because the risk is reduced. So like I said earlier, all you're doing when you're driving price into this high technology product, and people, that's the other problem, right? People don't look at something like cable is a high technology product, and yet you guys won an award for it.
Yeah, last year. Solar and storage show. So we brought the PV Ultra out, which is just a value-added solution for PV installs, removing the need for conduit and single-core cables. But it's quite remarkable to win Product Innovation of the Year with what is a cable.
Yeah.
But you say that, but what goes into making that cable is quite incredible. All the process, it's not as simple as extruding some copper and putting it in some PVC and whacking it on a drum.
Yeah.
And I think that, because for us, it's a simple product to use, right? You strip it back, sheath it, you put it into your connections, boom, your conductor's in there,
Jobs
you walk on, next circuit.
Yeah.
Connect into my RCBO, which has a cage clamp, screw it down, torque screwdriver, hopefully, walk away. They've been designed well, so they work easily. So there's almost like a reduction of understanding of how complex and technical these products are. And because of that, when you start shredding that away, using less copper, all of a sudden, your conductor runs warmer. It's going to break down quicker. That's going to break down at the terminal quicker. Going to create more heat on that RCBO at the terminal. That's going to reduce the life of the RCBO. And like you were saying earlier, if you've already got the cheapest RCBO you can find on the cheapest cable, you're never meeting a 10-year warranty standard on that, ever. You're going to have failures.
Manufacturers can choose what they do then, and how they actually make a cable. And you asked a question earlier about the manufacturer's fault piece. If someone come to us and said, could you make this cable cheaper by doing this, that and the other, and it's not morally right, there's no way we'd entertain it.
It's like why we won't do an IP65 consumer unit. I just won't do it.
Yeah.
They're dangerous.
But there's loads of publicised examples where that has been the case, cable-wise. So you go back to probably about 8 years ago now, but there was a massive range of armoured cables where the importer had asked them to make a 25mm and mark it 35mm. And 35mm marked as 50 and 50 marked as 70. And they brought that into the country and sold it. And there's publicised documents by Basic who picked that up. And that's a manufacturer, they obviously haven't got the morals. And it was, okay, we can do that. And you can do these things, but you shouldn't be doing.
Well, that's because for the manufacturer, for the factory in Turkey or wherever it is, don't care. Because as the importer, you take the liability as soon as it clears customs.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're like, well, if that's what you want, you can have it.
There was one further back than that where they imported in reels with 100 on, but there wasn't a unit of measure. And the reels were 100 yards, but they were sold as 100 metres. And so it's 91.6. Still got a reel of that at the factory that we saved. Yeah. But that, again, can you do this for us? If that was no, we're not going to help you try and defraud the marketplace, but someone else will do that because they want the business, and that's what's driving them to do it.
That's mental. Clever, but
That's good. That's good.
He's going to go check his reel now. It's not 100 yards on here, is it?
So in terms of like distribution channels, is it just a traditional model similar to ours, like just dealing with wholesalers?
Yes. So we deal with wholesalers. We're looking for partnerships. That's the big important point for us. And like Will mentioned earlier, if someone's willing to understand the products and the values that Doncaster Cables can bring and all these differentiators, then they're the ones that we want to work with, and they're getting the better prices and they're differentiating themselves in the marketplace so they can then sell that on. But we deal with electrical wholesale. We don't have any direct sales. We deal with some OEMs, and we export as well to other countries. If you actually go overseas, British manufacturing is regarded in higher regard than it is in Britain, which is just remarkable. But yeah, so it's just electrical wholesale channels, and then we just work with a variety of different wholesalers.
So, like you said before, you're looking for these partnerships, but in terms of the value, what value do you bring then? So do you do like educational, like, I was going to say educational courses, but like a kind of presentation as to why your cable's better, this, that, just teaching the wholesaler the main points as to...
Yeah, we can do as much or as little as they want. So we can go through just the high-level points. We can do open days. We can actually bring someone to the factory. It's 300,000 square foot factory with £20 million worth of machinery in there spinning round. So
it's a little bit bigger than our place.
But that's the best way to do it.
But here's a question. How many wholesalers that you work with actually ask, Actually ask for that training. Actually ask for, you know, all that information and so that they can then pass it on to upsell the product.
Yeah, it's a bit of a split, to be honest. It's less than half. Half of them are just happy. I understand all the stuff that you've explained, and you're there if I need you, and they just want that peace of mind. I want to sell a premium brand, and I don't want any comebacks whatsoever. And if anyone's got a technical question, I'll just send them your way, which is fine. And then some of the others want to learn more. I want to know more because I want to go and get your product specified. And I'm one of a few wholesalers that have got your products, and I want to be the most knowledgeable that can go out and get it specified and get that repeat business. But it's on the lower side who want all the details. Some of them are just happy knowing it's made over here. I've got your backup, and if something goes wrong, I can ring you up, and you're not going to try and hide away from it. Because we talked about those failure rebates. I probably count on one hand the number of issues we've had in this year. If you make something long enough, you're going to get an issue. It's how you deal with it when that comes. And I can count on one hand, and we deal with it. It's just ingrained in our culture. We're out the same day, next day, and it's not a sales rep that we send. It'll be myself, who were in technical for 10 years, and the technical manager on site. And we're just there to put things right. And that often doesn't get talked about. People don't want to admit that something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Stuff does go wrong. It's how you put it right and whether you're there. If you're going to do that with another cable manufacturer that's not of a premium quality like us or Prysmian, you just haven't got that.
You're not going to get that support.
You go into an importer who's going overseas to ask the question, and
well, you can't, because if you're buying something that is so low price at so low margin, those importers aren't going to be able to fund the support. For a fact, like there's not going to be enough meat on the bone for them. So and it's the same in our market, right? You call certain brands up with a technical question, and you're not going to get any feedback or any real response. They're not going to be able to help you. Your question about what curve you should use, what type, they're not going to know. You call us, you will. You call someone like Wilex, you will. You call someone like Hager, you will. Schneider, when you eventually finally get through, you will. But that's what all of that, that little extra bit, like you said, that's what that also pays for. And the reason I ask the questions how many ask is I will sit there. We had a great meeting here yesterday with the guys from Alert, and we went through all the technical side of things, how we're doing, what the company's planning to do, the R&D stuff, the new product, and they're really invested in it as a partner, and they took it all on board. They feed that back into the managers. We go up, we do training days, we do breakfast mornings, we do all this sort of stuff for their contractors, and it's no surprise why we are the only board they now sell at volume, and they're one of our biggest customers, and we're their biggest supplier of circuit protection, and the entire East Mids is a really good hotbed for us. However, the macro of our customer base goes, well, the price is about right, and I don't get any problems with it.
Yeah.
The end. That's it. And the amount of customers when we go to them, look, we've got these certs, we've got this, we've got all these data sheets, all this we can give you. They just say, okay, cool. They never actually ask for them, which blows my mind. That's something. Nathan has a bloody hard drive of all of our stuff on there, and they do, and it's just like, well, is that because contractors aren't, like you were saying earlier, James, you don't know to ask the questions, right? Is that because contractors aren't asking, or because you're not willing to do it? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think merchants are far more reactive. And we're speaking, we've had this conversation. I mean, you wanted self-service checkouts because you think they're that reactive. I may as well do it myself. Click, click. He wants them to fit his jobs for him. His leads. But the merchant model is a reactive model. So you go in, I want drummer 2.5, I want this, I want that, I want some cleats, I want whatever. And obviously you want your Navitas board, right? Even though your cities don't stock it. But Jimmy, you're going to tell them what you want them to do for you. They then go back, they do that for you, you have your coffee, they might even put it in the van for you, and off you trot. So there's a breakdown in that value message gets lost because it's not ingrained in the way the next part of the chain works. You know what I mean? With the wholesale and the contractor, there's not a new way of doing it, and that's why I think social media is awesome. Like the newsletter that James does, the WhatsApp newsletter. Yeah. Again, I haven't read this one. Yeah, I flagged it in my emails, but like just the ones you did on the breakers and stuff like that. There was stuff on there that I was just like, no one. Like, you asked me questions to put that newsletter together. No one has ever asked me Yet they look at an RCBO every day. They have no idea what the front of it says and what it means. Oh, it's like 6 amp B. Nailed it. The rest of it could be in Chinese. So but it's just things like that, and that's not taught at AM2. They're not taught to ask those questions as they come through their apprenticeships. Wholesalers are taught to never give advice. That was always don't give advice, because you then become the designer of the job. Liability comes down to the big thing of liability. And where now as manufacturers we can have a direct line into electricians. You guys, your content and what you're doing, you create the ability to ask the question. I do think the model will shift back. I don't think it will shift back in volume like the way it shifted the other way for price. But I do think, especially the younger electricians coming through now who are, live and die on their phones, like all generations do now. Oh, hang on, I didn't know that. And then where's the next port of call? The next port of call is the wholesaler. There's only so many times you can ask a wholesaler a question and they don't know the answer before they start thinking, we need to know this. Then they start speaking to the cable manufacturer called Doncaster. Hey, I've just been asked this question about your PV Ultra or your PVC cable. Is this true? What does this mean? And it's still a long process, I think, but we can drive the narrative change as manufacturers back into the guys who's fitting this product. It's just going to be a hard graft, and then you still got to rely on the wholesaler to deliver it.
Yeah. Or social media. So if you deliver it yourself,
deliver the product.
I think that'll come back. That need for knowledge will come back, and I think the industry did so well, and it got such a good reputation for self-policing that we've still got this probably ill-placed confidence that when someone says it'll do the job, and they've got a piece of paper. And something's going to come back round again, and people, no, I'm not just going to trust that piece of paper because it don't feel the same anymore, and I'm starting to get issues, and I'm getting tripping, and I'm going back and having to rewire quicker or whatever, and it's going to come back. And when it does, these big importers who haven't got the knowledge and the buying and selling in mass, but they haven't got all the technical, they're not going to be able to answer the questions. And you're going to go into a manufacturer overseas who will then probably say, well, you asked for this price, and that's how we engineered it. And this, it's just I mean, I think that regulator will be social media, because all you need is one thing to go wrong, and I've spread real quick. Don't let Dave Savory have one of your products go wrong. But it's true. I mean, you look at the Electricians podcast, right? When something happens and they tell the world, they tell their community tell their community, and it spreads real quick. And all of a sudden, now those manufacturers are getting asked questions at elect shows, or they're getting phone calls, or their wholesalers are getting pushed. But no, I don't want that. I've seen this video. I've seen this thing on Instagram. I've seen this YouTube. And I do think that will end up being the regulator. If people start getting failures or things catching fire or cable not doing what it's supposed to do, hang on, I've only got 95 meters on this drum, and that sort of stuff. It's again, like James said, it's going to prod the questions. Hey, so it's going to end up we don't want to be that brand get on blast on social from Dave, James, whoever is with someone with a decent following, because even if someone with a small following, if someone else catches hold of it, it grows really quickly, and there's no way you stop that. I don't think. So I think that'll be the one.
Going a bit off topic now, but I want to talk about the green goo. I know we mentioned it, and basically the history of it, because I've come across it once on EICR, and I obviously failed it. How does that happen, and what is it all about, really?
We've just done a video on this as well.
You should follow their channel, guys.
So the green goo, green exudation, it's decomposing plasticizer. So you've got a cable that's made with PVC. Over time, the plasticizer comes out of there and the PVC disintegrates. And then when it decomposes, it reacts with the copper. So the plasticizer is clear, and then once it turns green, the green goo bit, it's reacted with the copper, and you've got copper oxide in there. And it then becomes conductive. But it's just a breakdown of the product.
Is that from the heat buildup, or was it just time that
It's a mixture of them all. So over time, it'll happen naturally anyway. It gets accelerated if you've got heat build-up. So if you had a loose connection somewhere, you've got more chance of that happening because there'll be higher heat. Or you've just got less copper content in the cable. It'll run hotter and you're accelerating the decomposing of that plasticizer in the compound. So it just happens over time. And the video that we did, we talked about different options. So the easiest thing is to rewire the property. We tried to cover that for electricians where that isn't possible. It might not be possible to rewire that. The homeowner might not be able to afford the rewire, although you'd advise it. So we then went through different bits of how you could actually, what you could do to manage the situation, if you like. You need to be cleaning out the green goo from the outlets and the sockets because it's conductive. So you'd be doing more routine EICR inspections, cleaning those out. Insulation resistance testing like you do, but you might want to consider conductor resistance testing because the actual conductor can decrease conductivity-wise as it goes through. And then you just got to keep your eye on it and go through. But the easiest way is just to rewire it. If the cables,
I think when it gets to that point, you've seen that's the time really. You need to consider rewiring, trying to explain to the customer maybe the dangers of it. And
so the dangers will be you could do all your EICR tests and it'd all test out okay. But the plasticizer coming out, that's the bit that gives the PVC all the flexibility. So if everything stays in exactly the same place, you're likely that you'll test and your IR will be fine. If they then get some sort of movement, they have carpets fitted and carpet fitters take something up or get some, whatever it may be, you've got a real high risk of that cable then being very brittle.
I'm guessing this is not something we see, well, we don't see it really at all these days. It was like a period of time where this was like quite a big thing when it was installed, and now we're seeing it. But like cables being made now, is there still a chance of getting this? Or
yeah, definitely. It's a natural thing. It's going to happen. I think I didn't do this in the video like we did, but I think it's going to come round again because in the 70s, that's when between 70s and 80s they were developing these compounds, and there was a type of PVC that ended up being found more susceptible, which we're finding out, and that's the period of time you were talking about. From then up until the 90s, you had the UK cable makers making everything highest quality specs, putting antioxidants in the compounds, making sure it had a long lifespan. And we're now living through that period where all that was installed and we haven't had any green go issues in those periods. And now we're going down the other side of that bit where we've gone down the de-engineering route. Are people taking out the additives and are they taking out the stabilisers that mean it's a stabilised compound? Correct. And in 15 years, are we going to be back to the same thing where there's loads of green goo coming out of here?
It goes back to square one. If you drive the price out of everything, it's got to come from somewhere. And it's going to end up with green goo by the sounds of it. I'm running down the my wall.
Buy Doncaster Cables.
Green goo proof.
I've done it a few when we have the apprentices and stuff, but I think our cable is the only one left where you can look at the side of the cable and you know which factory it's made in. Because if a cable has got Doncaster Cables on the side of it, it was made in our factory in Doncaster. And I don't think there's a cable out there now that can say that, from either multiple site manufacturing or the actual manufacturer's hidden behind some co-branding. And it's so-and-so importer, something Cablo in Turkey that you don't know where it is.
There's lots of Cablos in Turkey.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And I think with the world getting smaller as well, it's not just your cable importers importing. Wholesalers are importing their own cable. And they've got even less infrastructure to support it. And and then you're going to get to a point where, because you're seeing it in the PV market already. A lot of big PV installers are buying their panels direct from source in China. Okay, they're buying the pro forma, they're bringing it in. It's no secret there are a lot of wholesalers that import their own cable, electrical wholesalers. It's a massive expense. It's probably the biggest product expense for a wholesaler is cable. Just as a value, I mean, because the amount they go through.
And lowest margin.
Without a shadow of a doubt. So again, they're getting hammered on price. So the natural thing is, well, hang on, if I cut out the importer and buy it from, because like you say, these factories out in Turkey and Lithuania, they'll sell to anyone. Me and him could set up a factory manufacturer or an import of cable right now. As long as we had the money to pay for it, they'd send it to us. I don't care. So that's been happening for a while. Now, if wholesalers are also importing their own cable, importers are importing their own cable, they're probably all still coming from the same place. There's even less control over, like, a wholesaler isn't structured like an importer is, with quality control and things like that. They're wholesalers, they're full-time wholesalers, part-time importers. They're bringing this in, they're putting that onto the market as well. Like, there's a lot of cable out there, potentially, that no one really knows anything about.
And that does worry me. So we've had, so we make about 90% of the cable we supply into the market, we make in our factory. 10% we buy in, either because we can't manufacture it, we can't manufacture rubbers because we only have extruders that'll process PVC and thermosetting, so we buy our rubber cables.
Rubber's a bitch to make as well. It's messy. It's a messy compound,
it's just different setup. Yeah. Or we choose not to, so whether it's bell wire or something like that. But when we're doing that, we're getting the cables in and we're testing the cables when they arrive, because we've got all this knowledge, we've got the test equipment. And there's been cable we've had, this is probably 5-6 years ago, where we've rejected it when it's come. So this was a new supplier, it was a rubber supplier. We did all of our normal due diligence, we tested the cables at descent, didn't just believe their test reports, all tested fine, placed an order, got the delivery, looked the same, completely different construction, high conductor resistance, they'd taken wires out of the copper bunch, etc. And we just got that cable and wouldn't release it into the marketplace. And because we've got the ability to test it, we tested it and went back to the manufacturer and said, this is not what we ordered, this is not what we tested, we don't want it. And their immediate response was, don't worry, Mr. Aaron, we send it to people around the UK all the time. It's not a problem. Oh, I don't care. We're not having it. And they were trying to negotiate with other people to take this container of goods and ship it to somewhere else in the UK because they knew that they would sell it on into the market. And we refused and wanted to send it just out of morals, really. We wouldn't let them arrange shipment somewhere else or deliver it somewhere else. We wanted to send it back and say, no, we want it out of our marketplace, take it back. Yeah. And when someone hasn't got the ability to even do those tests, it's so difficult to actually see.
It is, and testing, and I harp on about it all the time. Testing is a very expensive process, right? Because it's not just the processes it goes through for the test; it's the people with the understanding level to know what they're testing for, how something's supposed to perform, how it smells different to something that that it should do. All jokes aside, but do you know what I mean? And it's like, there is a de-skilling of people talk about this de-skilling of electricians all the time, right, with simplification of certain things and weekend courses and whatever. There's a de-skilling of manufacturing happening because we don't manufacture anything anymore as a country, really, and everyone's importing something, and if they've got no control over the control process over there and the quality processes over there and the raw materials over there, and then even if they have somewhat of a say or set a spec and it comes over, have no way of qualifying that, then actually you are still just guessing, aren't you, essentially?
Yeah, and it's remarkable how many tests are in cable. Maybe that's a good one to put the electrician on the spot. Well, if we had, if I ask you, what tests do you think a manufacturer does on a cable before they deem it fit for the marketplace? What do you think would actually?
You check the resistance of the cable. Just check. I'm guessing you've got like a criteria. It's got to be within. Yeah. As stupid as it sounds, like, does it strip as it should do? That's all. And the length, I would guess, would be my guess. Make sure you get, like you said, what we talked about earlier. If you've got 100 meters, if we get 100 meters, and that's all I could really think of.
Yeah, and that's when you get the knowledge behind it. So the length bit is not in any of the British standards, but it's a valid point, definitely. Yeah. The stripping bit in the British standard, as long as you can separate the sheath from the cores without it damaging the cores, it passes. No matter how difficult it is, that's a pass. So that then comes on to... that is crazy. But then the other tests, what people are then doing and taking care of for you, there's the tensile strength of the compounds, the elongation of the compounds, how much they'll stretch before they break, how that differentiates over time when we age it in aging ovens. There's water absorption tests if you've got an armoured. There's the zinc coating on steel. There's hot pressure tests. So if something's leaning on the outside of that cable and it's running at 70 degrees, how much will that sheathing indent before you get a short circuit? So there's all those sorts of tests, and cold temperature elongation, cold bend tests. And that's just a few. There's hundreds. But all these tests are being done behind the scenes to make sure that the product's fit for purpose. And rightly so, an electrician shouldn't need to know all that, because the manufacturer should be doing it. And they should have the equipment to do it and be able to test it. But when they're not, that's when the problem comes. And if someone's going to cheat on the simple stuff like marking a cable wrong, 25 being marked as 35, or short reels when they've got a chance of being caught, what are they doing behind the scenes with all those other tests where you've got no chance of even knowing what they are? And
especially when you're being driven down on price, you're just going to skip it because they all cost money. So on average then, as a leading manufacturer of cable, as a percent, how much more expensive are you than an importing brand?
It's very difficult for us to say because we're not setting the prices in the market. But you mentioned £5 a reel on Twin and Earth, and I'd say that's maybe a good example. Yeah.
So for £5, you're getting all those tests. You're getting made in the UK. You're getting a technical support structure. You've got, should anything go wrong, you've got a safety net there as well. You've got a quality control standard. You're actually getting 100 metres or 100.1 metres on your reel. A reel that doesn't break. And delivered next day.
Yeah, if the wholesalers have got it in stock, that should be there. But supporting British manufacturing at the same time,
keeping those
supporting the industry.
Still employed.
So what we talking about, going back to what we not know it, but now knowing what I know, next time I go into my wholesaler, I'll be asking if it's like that much within difference, like a fiver. I'll just ask for Doncaster Cables for all the reasons you just said. It's like a no-brainer. I think it's just awareness again.
And that's where the wholesaler needs to get in touch with us. So the problem that we face in the marketplace is, depending on the relationship we've got with the wholesaler and what the partnership's like, those prices will change. So if they only want to buy 2.5 Twin and Earth, we do not make any money on 2.5 Twin and Earth. We sell it as a loss leader and lose money. And we need to have a bundle of goods. So we make more margin on flexibles and armoureds because there's more value added in there. So we need to have a basket of goods, and they need to be buying flexers and armoureds and fire performance and meter tails and all these other ones. And if they're buying everything, the Twin and Earth then becomes a good price, and it's only £5 a reel more. But if they just want the one product, we can't offer any discount on just Twin and Earth because we're already losing money to start with.
It's bulk. Yeah, of course it is. I mean, you want that support. It's like if we had a wholesaler come on and wanted to buy one type of board with 3 types of RCBO, and that was all they were going to buy. Well, hang on, we need one. If we're going to be a partner, we need you to stock the range. So because we're obviously going to be working with you to send customers to you. If someone walks in and wants a 20-way board rather than a 12 that you've decided that you're going to stock, you need to have that. Plus, obviously, like you say, on your, should we call them popular lines, your core lines, you always make less money than you do on some of the other lines, and that's how it balances out, same as everything, right? So if you don't get that suite of product, that support across the board, you can't offer that support.
You can't.
Partnership,
it's not, but then I think some partnership models with wholesalers have become few and far between as a macro. It has become very transactional, next order. And we're seeing that because you can see from the order values from some of our customers, there'll be carriage paid orders because someone needed X, Y, and Z and they didn't have it on the shelf, but they know they're getting it next day. And they might have 5 or 6, 7, 8 orders around carriage paid values a month, rather than going, well, we're a partner, we know what we do. Here's a 10 grand order at the beginning of the month, and that's becoming less and less and less, isn't it?
100%. Quick question, and it's a silly one, right? Do people know that Doncaster Cables is British?
I'd like to think so, but we've had conversations where they don't, because it's so normal for
It's an assumption, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's not the norm to see proper manufacturing anymore. But we've been here for 40 years. Actually, our 40th year anniversary this year. So since 1984, we started off as a small factory in Doncaster, and we've expanded it. Same site still, but we're now expanded to 300,000 square foot.
That's mental.
Yeah. If there's another podcast I did where I got the number wrong. I said 600,000 square foot.
Hey, the local guys at the rates office.
I learned from that one. Neil Covey were like, we ain't got 600,000. So I said, don't worry about it. No one listens to that one. So yeah, I got the numbers wrong. But yeah, some people don't. And it's something we're very proud of, because you can add all this value in there, and we can actually show people around. But when people see it, it's normally, especially with electricians, we go around the site and we go to wire drawing. We draw our own wires from 8mm rod into all the wire diameters we want. We go to compound, and then we explain how we make these bespoke grades of compound to suit each cable. So we're engineering a grade to perfectly suit what the electrician wants, whether it's easy stripping or whether it's impact, abrasion resistance, armoured, etc. And then we go to bunching, when we talk about layup and how we actually lay it up tightly to give it a longer lifespan, etc. And the next stage is then the armouring, and at that point they normally turn around and say, I can't believe I normally moan about £1 a reel. Because they then see and they just think it goes in and comes out. Because that's what we see in a lot of these other factories when you look at
Have you guys
behind the
been putting
scenes.
videos up of the manufacturing process and stuff?
Yeah, we've done a few with different channels, and we like to get any electricians there as well, and they've done some content that's been great. But we started a segment called Machine Mondays, so every Monday we're trying to showcase one piece of kit. But we've got over 35 big pieces of machinery just in the factory.
Maybe we should go up maybe with Joel. He needs to work on his camera skills.
Yeah, it's about a 5-hour drive just to...
I got a petrol. All right. We'll take the van. But we'll come up, when we do some film, come up for a couple of days, do some filming and put it all across the channels and stuff, and show and walk people through essentially what this podcast. We can get those portable mics up and you can walk literally everything you said today and show. And
it'd be great.
Maybe do a follow up.
Yeah, it'd be good. Interesting.
Yeah, but just again, I think it's really important, and I know everyone thinks because I'm always stressing about it from where we stand, but it's an industry problem. It's an industry problem, and I'm not saying on my high horse. I openly and I'm quite proud to say our stuff's not made in Doncaster or in South Wales. It's made in China. But I know the standards of the factory, and that's why we're in business with them. We're in partnership with them. And it's the same way, Hager, Schneider, everyone makes it. They're the best at doing what we do, and that's why we do it with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if we could do it better here, we would try anyway. We wouldn't be able to. I mean, you and I especially, we ain't got the patience. But and it's about some things. Just the way the world is now, will always be imported, because wherever you're importing it from, sometimes they just do it better than we can do it. Those technical skills that used to be here aren't here anymore, and they've leapfrogged us. But you mentioned about factories, and they will make anything that you ask them for, essentially. People, when you say, where's your stuff made China? Oh, okay. All right. Well, you look at a Huawei phone, allegedly. Right? Most people really don't like it. It's a very cheap phone. You can pick up an Android's up 50 quid. People love their iPhone. It costs £1,000. Made in the same place. All comes from China. They will make, when it comes to electronics, they will make it to the specification that you set. But it's up to you to ensure that if you don't own that they are maintaining those standards for you. As that's your job as a professional importer, right? Yeah. If that's what you are. If you're not physically making it here, making it yourself, like you guys are, where you can control it, then your responsibility has to be maintaining that. It can't just be about sales. It's got to be about everything else, otherwise it all falls down. And there aren't many that do that. There aren't. But I guarantee you, those cable companies in Turkey and whatever, if they were set to a criteria that they had to meet, they'd find a way of doing it. They wouldn't be as price sensitive as they are. The coil wouldn't come in as cheap as it is. If they were told you need to get a reel that is the same quality as this Doncaster, if they used your product as a benchmark, they would still try and copy it, and then it would be up to that importer to try and maintain the standard. The thing is no one asks.
No, and there is some over there. There's definitely loads more at the lower end, but a lot of these have set up to be low cost, high volume manufacturers, and that's where they've set up. But if the demand was there, I want high quality products, then they'd definitely change that and adapt.
The volume of and the volume of outlets would shrink as well. That's it. Like, so you can go to China, you can pick up a consumer unit and an RCBO and pay nothing for it. Like, there are lots of factories out there, especially in China, that are set up to make very, very low value product at massive scale. Right? And that's what they do. And you see a lot of them in the marketplace over here now. They all look the same, different box, different name on it. It's the same thing. Okay? But again, we talked about, there's no quality control standards behind it whatsoever. There's very few factories in China that can make the products to our standard. And funny enough, all the ones that can are associated to a leading manufacturer. Yeah. So it's just, you use the term like a moral approach. I think that's really, that's probably the politest way to put it. But
and you've got to have the passion.
You do it 100%.
Even when you talk about your box, it reminds me of a book I read on Steve Jobs. When you mentioned the Apple phone, you've got to have that passion for it to be right, and you've got to relay that in a technical specification for somebody to make. And when I read that book with Steve Jobs, he was all obsessed with the packaging and how it looked, and he wanted that feel to come across of this is a quality. So there's no point in it being a quality product. The whole stage has got to be quality.
Yeah, it's the process of everything that you're going through. Yeah, but I'm really funny about that. Like even down to the point, it's got a soft touch laminate on which is the same as an Apple box. But so does our catalogs. So do our business cards. Like it all has to come to it the same. And we're very keen on that because brand is important, not because of a marketing perspective, because once they get used to using that product, it'll be the same with Doncaster. Once they get used to using that product and that experience using that product, then they start the value stays in, and that's what that branding gets associated to, right? And it's like, yeah, there's a lot, and I do think it will come back. And I actually, social media gets a lot of bad rap for a lot of bad rap for a lot of good reasons, if that makes sense. Like it has a lot to answer for. But I also think from an industry, if we use it properly, I think we can bring the standard back up. I think you'll get that self-policing structure.
And promote that desire for people to want stuff designed or made in the UK as well. Because if you look, I enjoyed driving through Wales. As soon as I crossed over into Wales, the amount of Welsh flags that I've seen, unbelievable. And it's exactly as it should be, and we don't have that near Doncaster. We have Union Jacks up around our Doncaster factory, but we should be proud of what industry we've got, and we should be proud of the products, what we can produce and what we're doing. And a lot of that seems to be forgotten. We've gone to this disposable, throwaway society, and hopefully if we educate the market and keep putting out this content about how stuff's different, the biggest thing that we try and get to electricians is they've actually got a choice. You've got a choice in what cable you have. You just have to ask for it.
So just finally then, before we let you get your 4-hour journey back on with a full charge, I hope, do you think Doncaster, because the wholesalers, when they're a partner, can be fantastic, but when they're not, they can be a bit of an obstacle in you getting that, not only that message, but actually that physical product to James, for example?
Yeah.
Do you think Doncaster will ever incorporate a D2C model?
No, I don't think so. So we really value the wholesaler in our supply chain when they're a partner and they understand the product. And we can't service electricians as a wholesaler can service them. Our product's bulky, ugly freight. And someone who wants, I've just run out of this reel of twin and earth and I need another one straight away, they can drop it in a van and they can drop it off, etc. But we're not set up to have direct relationships and have credit lines and everything else, and it's ugly freight, so I can't see that being a part of our business. We have got a small web store, but it's more from a sustainability point of view. So we're massively sustainable. On-site's a big part of our business. 100% renewable energy, scope 1 and 2 carbon neutral, zero waste to landfill, 94%. We could probably cover that in the video when we come around the factory. But
that
massively,
would cost a couple of quid,
massively sustainable. And when we've got the reels of cable that we make, we're making a 5,000 metre reel, and then we chop it down what the wholesaler wants, 250s, 300s. Every reel we end up with a short length of 37 metres, 21 metres. And a wholesaler doesn't want that because they want the big one to cut down from their customers. So we've got a website set up where we can sell these short reels direct to contractors because a wholesaler doesn't want it, but an electrician might have a use for 21 metres of 3-core 6mm armoured. But it's more of a waste perspective, and that has its own challenges because we've then got to ship
it,
a reel.
So what's the website called?
So that one's store.doncastercables.com.
There you guys, check it out.
And then,
might
it's just
grab a bargain.
a variety, different reels. Some will be well priced, some won't be. It sort of depends at what copper. When it was made, it could have been sat there now for months, and copper price might have been way high, or it might have dropped. So we just do it as a waste thing. So if you go in there, there'll be different price things depending on when it was made, and you can just buy it direct, pay by credit card, and then it gets shipped.
Legendary stuff.
Well, Aaron, any other questions for Aaron before we let him get going?
No.
No, I think
No. Guys, first off, I'd like to say a massive thank you to Aaron for coming all the way down here. It's immense. And don't forget to check out their social medias, guys. It sounds like there's an awful lot still to learn. I know I learned a lot today. And if I get any feedback or anything else, drop some comments in. We'll put Aaron's contact details if he wants to share them in there as well. Check out their Instagram as well. They're about 8,000 followers. Same on TikTok. There's some great stuff on there. And hopefully me and James will get something booked up to get up to Doncaster. He can drive. He'll have his pumpkin spice latte on the way.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Little girl. And until next time, guys, remember the joy is in a journey. And we'll see you next time. Take care.